I personally want to thank international football for delivering us some injury news, without which we'd have nothing to podcast about. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. Block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, we're going to do a mailbag episode. It's one of the things we love to do during the international breaks because you come up with questions that are interesting while we struggle to come up with anything of interest to say to you. So this allows you to participate in the show and allows us to come up with hashtag content. We do have injury news that we can cover. I'm not in my normal location, so if the sound is not its usual mediocre quality, maybe it's better. Maybe it's worse. The most important thing is you're here and we love you. Tomorrow there will be a One Club podcast. And, I would say that, no one does women's football better when it relates to Arsenal than Tim. And he's got so many places you can find him doing that. One Club is our effort to get Tim to give you some stuff under our banner, obviously. And tomorrow he and Clive will be doing a One Club pod over on Patreon, which I think you'll really enjoy. We also did a law pod. So Christopher Flanagan, who teaches the stuff, studies the stuff, practices the stuff, sports law, sports competition law, broke down all the dense nitty-gritty details in the City versus Premier League case. If you want nitty-gritty, we have that for you, and you can get it over there on Patreon. So that is available for you. But what is available for you here is, just great content around, I don't know. No, we're going to talk Declan Rice. We're going to talk fullbacks. I think we got a lot of stuff to talk. We might even talk Jonas Eidevall a bit. But first, we're going to talk to Clive. His name is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, man, I'm hanging in there. I've hit the age now where some things go wrong with your body for no reason, right? Like my elbow hurts. You go to the doctor. Doctor's like, you got a hurting elbow. Like, well, what do we do about that? He's like, you just soldier on, buddy. Your elbow just hurts now. That's just a thing your elbow does. Okay, well, my leg hurts too. Yep, it's good. That's related to your back. Well, what do we do about my back? Yeah, really nothing. Not much. You're just going to have that pain too. So Clive, I'm at the age where things just hurt and doctors tell you that just hurts for you now. We're not going to treat that.
Well, you are so American. I've had that for the last 15 years. And because we're sort of like British, we just don't even bother going to the doctors, right? We just limp around, hobble around, and that's it. We don't expect perfection, Elliot. You Americans expect perfect service all the time. And I'm afraid.
Well, to be fair, we work 80 hours a week for the privilege to allow a healthcare professional to see us to just split the bill with them. So I do think that if we are going to live our lives in an effort to be able to pay for our healthcare should be able to do more for us than tell us that hurts you now. Enjoy. Here's some pills. Maybe they'll work.
Fair point.
Yeah. Do you have anything stronger, Doc? Maybe some bourbon. Maybe something that comes in a rolled up piece of paper that I can light. Okay, let's get on to the serious business. I'm going to hit you with the first question. Okay. And the first question, of course, comes from Yankee Gunner on Twitter. Most of you don't know him because you blocked him. He says, what is Declan Rice's best role for Arsenal? We had a few versions of this question, Clive, but I think it's time for a Rice debate. Declan Rice at Arsenal. Do we understand what Mikel wants of him? Do we understand the player he is? He scored a goal for England the other day, arriving in the box as sort of the making the deepest run to the byline to slot home. He scored important goals for us. He puts in corners for us. He covers ground. But now that Marino's back, or at least starting to be integrated, I think we have a fascinating few weeks and months ahead of rediscovering Rice, potentially in a new role. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, I'm going to say it, it's not to select him in one role for him to be there for the next 7 years. It's just to develop him as a footballer, because I think he can do many roles. And the way a regular season is, that sounds a bit American, didn't it? The way a regular season is, we're going to need him to do different roles in different times of games. So I think really teaching him how to react in certain scenarios is something not just for Declan Rice, but for other people. I'm developing some thoughts in my mind around how we manage players, how we coach around instinct, how we create movements in relation to your key opponents and also your teammates, right? So I need to get the words right before I come out with it, but you can see it, Declan Rice is somebody that reacts to other people and what they do, and he's really reactive when he's behind the ball, when he can see the play, he can really go and get things. That's something I know he can do. Excuse me. There are some things I know he hasn't quite mastered yet, but I'm not really worried. A 25-year-old that's that invested in the game, that invested in it on improvement. The way he receives the ball at the base of midfield, sometimes I think he wants to receive it on the run because he feels more comfortable. When he receives it standing still, what he does, he tends to use his front foot more than his back foot, which maybe creates a let's send the ball back from where it's come from type scenario. When you receive it on your front foot, when you receive it on your back foot, you open up the play to go forward, right? So I think he needs to do that's what he does. He does front foot, then he manipulates the ball into an area where he can pass it. So for me, he needs to. I was talking to Adrian Clark about this last week. Actually, he needs to improve how he approaches the ball, particularly on the right hand from the right hand side, shall we say? From the left, what he does is he goes wide, then he comes inside of his first touch. They can see the whole pitch and he can do what he likes, right, on his strong foot. On the right hand side, sort of centre right, I think he needs to approach the ball in a better way from the touchline. So when Timber or White or a Saka gives him the ball, I think if he approaches it correctly, and then he can use it first time to fizz it through. So I think rather than not being there too early, leave the space, run into it, receive the pass, and fire it into the forwards, fire it into Odegaard. And these are just details that coaches will just spot. All that does, it hides the things that he can't do. So he a bit more like Jorginho. Jorginho does it really, really well, actually. If he wants to watch somebody, it's Jorginho to watch. Don't watch Thomas Partey because he's got natural skill that he doesn't maintain. But Jorginho doesn't step past people. He just gets his body position right to put the ball where he wants it to be. So if he should study a Jorginho to play at the base, rather than trying to be Thomas Partey, who just has a little bit more natural playmaking rather than metronomic ability. That makes sense, Elliot?
It does. I mean, the way the midfield's going to be constructed has so many knock-on effects for so many players. We had somebody ask a question about Trossard. Should he keep one of the 8 roles when Odegaard is back because he's been so good in that in his relationship with Kai? And that seems to have brought Martinelli back into the team. And then another person asked, is Partey the one who should be dropped, or has he proven that he can't be dropped with the way he's been playing? And so we think Merino is a potential starter. We know Odegaard is, but he might be back later than we hope. Let's say mid to late November. Rice we think is going to start every single game. And even if we're not picking regular 11s, right? It doesn't have to be the same group every time. Who do you think the knock-on effects are biggest for as we try to make these changes? Like, what relationships do you want to make sure we preserve from what we've seen, and what relationships are going to have to change?
Well, Trossard's been a hero already this season, hasn't he? Because Odegaard stepped out. Well, Trossard and Havertz is actually a combination of Trossard, Havertz, and the fullbacks, and Saka have replaced Martin Odegaard. And that's how good he is, right? We've had to literally change our dynamics, change our system, playing in a almost a flat 2 double pivot and a front 2 false 9, false 10, whatever you want to call it, to create a system which suits this group without Odegaard, right? So all those players have stepped up, and some people say he's holding us back. Well, it won't take long for him to remind everybody that he's not, but let's wait for that to happen. I suppose, Elliot, I look at these players as almost like assets, right? So, are you okay? Just checking you're okay. As assets. And so almost like buy, hold, sell, right? So you look at Rice, Merino, Odegaard, they're buys, right? Partey and Jorginho, they're sells, aren't they? They're potentially sells. We're not sure if they're both going to go, but they are people, and maybe the last year of their Arsenal careers, potentially, right? So you have to invest in the ones that have got the contracts, the ones that are the future. So, but until then, to invest in them, the 2 guys who are sells need to play, because those guys can't play every minute. And also, I'm not for picking the first 11 in October, November, because the real first 11 we want is Champions League quarter-final day. That's the day when we start to settle into a groove with a 11, 12, 13 that are really the ones that all of us will know who they are, based on form, based on where we are in our evolution. And until then, it's about how can we keep people healthy? How can we still provide a level of 7, 8 out of 10? So our worst is still better than their best. I remember that quote from Mikel, and I really got that. We should be able to rock up and say our average day he's still good enough to beat Southampton 3-1 at home. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's where you want to be.
Yeah, and it is going to be tricky. I mean, I've said this on a previous pod, but I think Odegaard's going to be out for a while, but Marino's back now. So Marino comes in and maybe Rice moves more to the right-sided midfielder, which has knock-on effects for how we use Trossard and Kai. Maybe Trossard moves to the other 8 and Kai moves to center forward again. Or Kai stays where he's been playing. Or Marino doesn't come in and Partey stays in. Or maybe it's Marino, Rice, and Partey. I mean, I think what's going to be interesting is until Odegaard is back, and even then, it's going to be deep into December, if not January, before we really understand what the most effective midfield dynamic we have at our disposal is, right? And that's not to say that there's only one way we can play in that area or only one group that we can use. But I think we will be in the lab, as we've talked about, for a long time this season, Clive, because when the transfer window closed, I think a lot of us thought, write it in ink, Marino, Odegaard, Rice. That's the midfield. And the front line is Martinelli, Havertz, Saka. Write it in ink. And the back line, whatever. Point is, I think a lot of us felt that was what we were heading towards. Marino, Odegaard, Rice, if we see it at all, will be mid-November before it ever plays together. And there's going to be a lot of other permutations prior to that are going to have to do good things for us in big games. Liverpool, right? Yeah. Newcastle away, Chelsea, Inter away. There's tough games coming up. And so we're going to find some solutions, none of which are the midfield 3 we might have been writing in ink before the season ever kicked off. And I think that means that this process of determining the best version of this Arsenal is going to take a while before I think it really comes to fruition clearly for us.
Yeah, and I'm not worried, Elliot. I'm not, you know me, I sound to be, I'm going to be sort of negative on this. I'm just not interested in being perfect yet. I'm interested in having a squad that can get us where we want to get to, because there are people listening to this saying we need to get further in the cups. We need to start winning something, right? How we could do it with that same 11? Now, Marino played half an hour for Spain the other day. So I'm not sure he's had a full 90s for a long time. Maybe his last full 90 may have been for the 3rd group game for Spain in the Euros in the summer. I think it might have been Algeria. I don't know why I'll say that out loud. And when Raya played and a few people played, that might be his last full 90. I'm not sure if he did a Real Sociedad pre-season game. So he had half an hour. He had a few little half hours. So he hasn't played a full game for quite a while. I can safely say that. So we don't need to rush him. He just needs to build his time. Remember when Timber's came back from his ACL? He's now had a little bit of a breakdown, potentially. We're not sure where he is. Build his minutes, build his time. And then we'll see who's ready when that moment comes, right? So I do think at the start of the year, when we started to watch his team and Zinchenko had a bit of a bounce, he was in many people's first 11. Many people's first 11. Right? I haven't heard anyone talk about him recently. You know, when he comes back, what's he going to do? He changes so quickly. You know, none of us was predicting Kiwior coming to a team in last January and having an 8, 9, 10 game run where we didn't lose and won all the games, and he was part of that group. None of us saw that coming. So you just have to leave your mind open to this, to what could appear. You know, Ben White's never been out of the team for as long as we can remember. Suddenly he's out of the team, and suddenly we've got Timber and Calafiori playing, and we're all thinking, oh my God, look at our fullbacks. They've completely changed how we play, blah, blah, blah. Let it all come. The more good players we have, the better chance we have of knocking those light blue boys off their perch, mate. That's where I look at it. The more good players, the better.
Well, that certainly leads to some interesting questions around the fullbacks, and we are going to get to the Martinelli and Saka injury questions as well, but I guess I'll just go to James Morgan then at Mullet Rider, who asks, if White, Timber, and Calafiori are all fit for the Bournemouth and Liverpool games, who do you play at fullback? And I think you could even throw Zinchenko in there if you wanted to. But yeah, if White, Calafiori, and Timber are all fit, how do you see the fullback situation playing out now? And is there maybe more of a horses for courses approach that we start to see developing?
Yeah, I think so. I think Timber being a right-footed left back and someone who can play right back. You know those days when you got those inverted left wingers that are sharp off the mark? Just play him. It's not a problem, is it? Just play him. He's very good in one-on-ones. He can go inside or out. His feet are so light when he's running backwards, when he's holding for delay people. Mate, he's just very, very good at moving side to side. There are other days he wants some go forwards from Calafiori. You just play him. You can see Calafiori giving Gabriel a rest at centre back real quick. He's not far away, particularly if when Tomiyasu comes back and you can play left back maybe. He's a bit more static, and then suddenly Calafiori is playing the John Stones role as a centre back and pushing in, and Tomiyasu as a natural left centre back will just stand still. There's so many combinations that you can have. So with Odegaard, I thought White did struggle. I thought he missed Odegaard a bit, but I think he was also injured. So he just stood still while he was playing injured. But we missed him. It's the first time I've seen him have a down period. And funny enough, he hasn't played much since. So look at the Villa game again. He was good, but he was not his normal self. So White comes back, starts running up and down like a train, like he did in pre-season. We saw him. But then he's going to cause a bomb for somebody, isn't he? And we saw Timber in the summer, and I said to James and you, I said, he's going to play this year. And then you said, for who? I said, I don't care. He's playing.
Yeah.
And look where he is now, right? It took a little time to get him going, but he's playing, right? So
I think he looked better off the right than the left, though.
Yeah, I suppose those early games, I think he can do both. I genuinely think he can do both. But yeah, off the right, he's done quite well, particularly without Odegaard. He's done quite well, but I don't think it's a problem for him. I think he can play. I think he can genuinely play all three positions. Right centre back as well. He can do that without a doubt. So yeah, it's great to have these options, isn't it? These discussions. I honestly, these are first world problems, mate. I am not worried at all.
Well, and for that Liverpool game, we know Mikel likes playing Tomiyasu against Mohamed Salah. We know he likes that matchup.
Well, he did it once, and I thought Tomiyasu deserved to play, regardless whether he's the right foot or not at that period. But I would play. I think Timber's even better matchup for him because he's nimbler. I think he's more nimble than one-on-ones. But again, we can have that debate, can't we? And it's a real one, isn't it? It's a real one.
It's funny because Dibbling and Hakimi have both given Calafiori a tiny bit of trouble out there defensively. We know so little about this player other than, what we've seen when we scouted him and the little we've seen him play for us. He looks so exciting. I think there are people that have some curiosity about his defensive solidity in the 1v1s. He's very front-footed. He wins a ton of tackles. His statistics are great. But as we know, the best defenders don't rack up statistics because they don't have to make defensive actions, right? So Saliba, Virgil van Dijk, they don't make tackles, period. Yeah. With Calafiori, when it is time to come up against someone like Mohamed Salah, the one player on Liverpool that can really kill you from nothing, would you be concerned?
I wouldn't. I think while watching his defensive style, he really gets defending. He really understands it, properly about how to use his body, how to close spaces down. The only thing sometimes we've seen him got run a couple of times, but then you look at the root cause to that. He was basically late to get in there. So the 3 times, maybe Savinho as well, when he got there late. So he has to make a decision if he's going to press and how quickly and aggressively he presses. Does he give himself a chance to slow down, or does he press, then hold and delay, and then take the side away and make them go backwards? These are all things I feel that come with fitness and sharpness. I still think he's nowhere near his physical potential, not even close. I'd say 60% to where he can be physically and sharpness-wise and learning a new league. And he'll just have to make those decisions when he wants to go in and go and be aggressive and then go through people, like he has done on many occasions. But sometimes he gets popped, a little 1-2, because he hasn't got there quickly enough. I'm a yard off, little 1-2 combination, then it's a running race backwards. And that's not his strength. That's super top-end elite speed. If Gabriel is occupied, to not covering behind him, then Gabriel makes a decision, I'll hold the middle. Let's see if Calafiori can put the crosser under pressure. Then I can hold the middle, I can fix my position on the front post, and we can still defend it as a unit. If he lets him go, like Kivior did against Bayern, which was my frustration, was he didn't affect Sane enough in the initial phase, and Sane got a big run on him and was able to then not be affected into our box. That was a mistake. Kivior should have smashed him, or at least got hold of him to not allow, or put him under pressure to not allow accuracy in his last action. So this is things that you learn, right? So we're learning, and he's learning, and 22 years of age, Elliot. Jeez, man. Wish I was 22.
Well, I wish I was 32. I'm not going to get greedy. Okay, so we got a couple more here that I want to get to. Well, let's do this. Pierce Hamilton has a question for me. It says, question for Yankee Gunner. Has the amount of raw onion in Tim's now infamous cheese and onion cob altered your opinion of British people and their eating habits for the better or worse? Pierce, this sandwich, I find myself ambivalent because I like cheese and I like bread. And the more cheese you want to put on, the more bread you want to have. Like, I'm in. You know, if it's cheese, if it's on bread, I'm in. The onion has thrown me. I actually think raw onion can be tasty, but I do get reflux from raw onion.
Yeah.
So I find that I try to avoid it. That volume of onion would destroy my ability to enjoy the cheese on the bread, I feel. I know Andrew said he felt the sandwich was dry. You take that onion off, I'm going to eat the cheese and bread. Like, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to enjoy it because it's cheese on bread. You want to melt it a little? Now we're talking. But no, yeah, the onion is an issue for me, and I would say that I think the attention to the sandwich is maybe more than I would have expected, but I certainly understand the reaction. I do wonder, had there been no onion on that, would people just say, big wedge of cheese on bread? And I think they would have, is my opinion. Okay.
That picture is pure genius, by the way. It's just genius. That's such a clever... Tim is something else, mate.
he really gets it, doesn't he? So Tim was on the BBC at halftime of the Arsenal
really well,
Chelsea women's game.
Really well.
And Giant Gunner photoshopped the Cobb sandwich to where his head was instead. So it was just a giant Cobb sandwich talking to the cheese and onion Cobb talking to the BBC, which was very funny.
When I think of all of the things we've done, all of the podcasts we've done, all of the wisdom we've shared, we hope. And then one of the most popular things is a cheese roll with an onion in it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. It just goes to show you there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? As long as they're talking about you. I don't subscribe to that, by the way. Okay. Andrew the Hinkley Gooner at From Dial Square says, should Arsenal be more strict with players in these early season international breaks and stop them going, or does it risk making the players unhappy by doing so? Firstly, obviously, let's set aside the fact that they don't really have a lot of power to stop them, but we know there have been managers, Alex Ferguson, chief among them, who would stop players from going. Ryan Giggs comes to mind. I did enjoy Andrew on the Arscast referring to him as Ferguson's pet, which is one way you could refer to him. But yeah, and this obviously, this question comes from the fact that Saka has limped out of England camp. Did look like he was holding a hamstring, and even a minor hamstring. That's tricky for an explosive player. You have to be careful. There's a calf issue for Martinelli. Again, for an explosive player, you have to be careful. And I will say, with calf issues, the thing you worry about is the Achilles, right? Because if you push it on a calf injury, you can pop your Achilles. That's when you see a lot of that happen. So maybe you can give me your thoughts on these injuries, how worried they have you, if at all, and just the idea of letting players go away to internationals. We've got another one in November, and it just feels like every single time there's an international break, someone comes back broken. It's been not a great run for us with international football.
Yeah, we'll bring it back to the Nations League. These are competitive games. It's almost like they're made friendly is competitive. And there are rules around these type of competitive games, internationals, that you have to adhere to. So what's your way around it? Have good relationship with the player, good clarity with the player, and have good clarity with their federations of their countries, for example. So Saka obviously played right into the final of the Euros, then was there for the first game and played both games and started. Then he started the next game and the next break. And so at some point, somebody's going to have to say something. But then he got a new manager trying to establish himself, even though he's interim. And so he wants to pick people in the right position. So he picks him. And Saka's probably thinking, well, I'm under a lot of competition in my position, per se. I need to play. But at some point, you've got to put yourself first. And he's obviously, he's taking himself out of these games with a minor injury. And they've had a little bit of sensible thinking around it. I'm not worried. And look, deep down, we're all fans, right? We want everyone else's players to go away and get injured, and our players to sit at home with their legs up watching EastEnders. That's what we really want. But it's not going to happen because the rules say you have to let them go. And also, these players want to play for their countries. And sometimes I think having a new environment is good for them. Now I'm looking at Saliba playing in the French team, even though he should be on the right-hand side of that defence, on the left-hand side of the defence, making the odd mistake. He looks really happy amongst his countrymen, right? Really happy. And I think that's really good. That you don't want players going away and not feeling part of it. I think Trossard had a bit of a rough summer, with the Belgian team, got back in this later squad, scored a goal and assist. Hopefully we'll benefit from that, raising confidence. So it goes two ways, mate. As long as they're sensible, if we want to think back, and I may be talking just sort of not factually, but I wonder about when Gabriel Jesus went away with Brazil for the World Cup, how fit he actually was before he went. And again, I've got no information. I just got a suspicion that when he broke down very, very quickly and they were losing for 3 months, that's a season-turning event. As long as people are honest and they're clear about where they are, that's the sort of stuff that bothers me. The Odegaard one, when he got the kick against Brighton, which I think was very, very costly. I think it cost us 2 points. We didn't react quickly enough. And then he goes away with Norway, and we all know he was carrying that leg. And then that potentially leads to, again, to another freak event, and we lose him for a couple of months, maybe 2 to 3 months. This stuff is important, that you're honest about where you are, that you don't overstretch yourself. I think it's a two-way thing with the player and with the club, and actually with their international teams, right? So that's what we need to. That's what I'd like to see us improve upon. I think Arteta will be really pushing these players to be honest and open about where they are health-wise, and maybe have us is the example.
Yeah, I think ultimately what we kind of have to accept is that injuries are a combination of luck and recruitment. Some of it is just some players are more durable than others, and they don't break down, and their body can handle the demands of modern football in a way that other bodies can't. So you have to recruit players that you think have that quality. I remember, I want to say it was Arsene Wenger. Famously, they would check your teeth. They were convinced there was something that you could see with the teeth that would tell you if you were going to have soft muscle injuries, all kinds of weird stuff that you can do to try to analyze. We know the high performance centers now are taking more data from athletes' bodies than the shuttles that go up into space and connect to the space station. So you do have the technology there to support it, but you really need to recruit players that have durability. And this is why I think, you can't look at a player like a Pedro Neto, even if you like him. Because if I said to you realistically, if Pedro Neto becomes an important player for Arsenal and for his nation, how often will he be available? You see it with Tomiyasu. I hate to say this is not the fault of players. I want to be clear. Some players can't stay fit. Zinchenko's calf is going to go. It's going to go every 6 weeks. It just is. And again, I want to be clear. No one's blaming players, but certain bodies hold up better than others, and you have to recruit for that. And then the luck part of it just comes from Martin Odegaard gets his foot stuck under him, and he's gone until November, right? It's not because there's too much football. I mean, granted, every time you play a game, you could get injured. So if you play 1,000 games, you might get injured more than if you play 5 games. But I think that we want to rage against the calendar, and the fixture calendar definitely plays a role in it. But even before it got this crowded, we saw players like Thomas Rosicky, right? We saw players like Jack Wilshere, Santi Cazorla. You wind up with some players that never recover from an injury or can't stay fit, and that's just always been the way it is. So, Clive, I do think we want to always feel that you can control situations. We want someone to blame, someone to be responsible. But in some instances, in my mind, it's as simple as a player's physiology and luck. Sometimes it's luck.
Sometimes, Elliot. But we touched this the other day with Tim, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important. It's something that I've spoken about previously as well, is that when you have a series of games, and we all think about games in blocks now, and when you have a series of games, you can't help but manage yourself for this series of games. So when you're playing Spurs, Atalanta, and Man City within 6-7 days, you cannot tell me those 3 games are not in your mind about how you approach them and how you use your energy. How you, within those games, and how you manage certain moments as a group by staying tight together to conserve your energy. You can't tell me that doesn't happen in a player's mind or in a coach's mind. It does happen. Those 3 games were fantastic games, right? We didn't get beat. They all stay in our minds. And maybe not the Atlanta one, but we'll stay in our minds. But that you can't get quality in those 3 games. 3 away games, you can't expect quality because you manage moments and the overall game will suffer. We're playing in bursts again. Remember we used to do that before, playing bursts?
Yeah.
We're playing in bursts again because we're trying to manage the whole game. I don't like the fact we had 2 home games where we're playing bursts from behind or from a draw position, but we managed it, right? So yeah, this is just where we are. I'd like to see less football matches. I'm not sure why the League Cup's got a 2-legged semi-final, for example. I'm not sure if we need a third cup competition in England, by the way, second cup competition. I'm not sure we need it. But there are other people, in the league and the EFL that actually want that revenue, and it's very important to them. I do understand that. But it's only the top percentile players that play Champions League and play international football. They're the ones really struggling. And they're the ones everyone wants to see. There are a lot of players that are having a 2-week break, probably desperate to go and play right now, who are not in internationals. They want to go and play their football and they can't because they're waiting for people to come back. So this is a global problem. It's not going to be changed because there's too much money involved until we sit down and say, this is our calendar and we need to have a gap between games. Players need to have X amount of weeks of rest that is agreed by all the federations. And I don't think any team should be playing within 48 hours of their previous game. I mean, Man City had a game against us on the Sunday and a League Cup game on the Tuesday. Now, I'm not a fan of Man City, but that is not right. That is not right. So we need to protect people and protect players, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a case of all things can be true. The football calendar is too crowded and it is going to lead to more injury. And we're going to have fewer of the players we want to watch play available when we want them available. I also think it's true that as a fan of any particular club, you need a little bit of luck and you need good recruitment. You look at someone like Reece James, you feel for him. But does anyone think Reece James is going to ever stay fit for a long period of time? I don't. And I don't think it's his fault, right? I just don't think Reece James can stay fit.
His body's changing.
And
some of his recoveries may be incorrectly diagnosed. He may have to do a Ryan Giggs and start doing proper stretching and changing. And I think even change his position, because less explosive. He played centre midfield a lot for Wigan when he was on loan. And I can see him playing that position going forward because obviously his body's changed. And those big wing back roles, bombing it down the right wing, mate, that's only going to lead to
sprints up and down the touchline. That's just asking for trouble.
It is. It is. None of us want Thomas Partey to play right back, do we? Up and down the touchline.
No.
Why?
No.
Because we know there's a history of thigh pulls there, right? So let's keep him inside and look after him. That's how it goes.
Yeah, and so that I think leads to just saying that ultimately, I think Martinelli and Saka probably are fine, and I think it is probably precautionary. But I think it doesn't need to be a big thing to keep them out a game or two. Now, missing Bournemouth away may seem like, we can get through that. That's a tricky fixture. You want your best players available, but it's Liverpool after that, and there's Inter away, and there's Chelsea, and there's Newcastle. Like the run we have gets hard, then it gets easy again. So we have this sort of ebb and flow of the fixture list that way. All right, one more quick one before we talk about NordVPN. Neelish at knee_cap on Twitter says, "Hi guys, over the last few weeks, I've realized that the entire media pundit narrative is mainly trying to rage bait Arsenal fans to drive engagement. Don't think it'll change much, even if we win major trophies. I feel the best way is to channel them out and focus on the team, discuss, and Lyle Buckenjohn in Discord had something similar. Why is there such a negative stance on Arsenal in the English media? Can you break down exactly why the English media seem to take the stance they do regarding the Arsenal? We were soft in the late Wenger era and easily bullied, and the media praised the likes of Mourinho and Conte for the dark arts and stoic defending. Now that Arteta's built a group of men that can defend themselves in any situation, we're ridiculed. I find it fascinating and disproportionate as a South African watching from afar. And I think if you missed it, there was a just super, super fun moment this week where Graham Souness said Arsene Wenger is not a football man, coming from noted football man Graham Souness, who is not fit to lace Arsene Wenger's fancy dress shoes. So yeah, I don't think that there's much there that's worth dissecting, but I do think the question is an interesting one. Are we in our own bubble, Clive? Does every fan base feel this, or or is there really a media narrative designed to rage bait Arsenal fans because we are good for clicks and views, and that's all they've got left to go for?
Yeah, it's a quiet time, Elliot, and so why not have a go at Arsenal? 'Cause that seems to work. You rage Arsenal fans, then everyone gets upset and gets mad. That piece of content gets viewed, and then you get a week's worth of people saying Graham Souness was right or Graham Souness was wrong. So that piece of content gets viewed, and so it works. And I suppose, you know, we're pretty calm. Well, I'm pretty calm most of the time. And
Speak for yourself.
it used to get me upset. It used to get me really upset. I'm not going to pretend that it didn't work. It used to get me upset. I used to like really rage at Adrian Durham on TalkSport and his Daily Arsenal. What are they doing with Daily Arsenal? Blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's sort of I worked it out. So why I worked it out. I thought actually, Arsenal is good money. We got there's a lot of us and we care a lot, right? And we get stuck into people and we defend our club, and so it's going to work, right? So, and I suddenly thought, well, you know what? It's more important that we focus on ourselves and focus on not being broken apart. I mean, Arsenal fans were the ones that really started a lot of this in the media, this new media, you know, and so we were the ones that were first online raging, you know, around our manager, etc. And so we were defined by that identity. And now there's a little bit more of a collective identity, or a lot more of a collective identity, where people can see progress, see improvement. And then we're embracing each other a lot more until we lose the game. Embracing each other a lot more. And then, and so now it's about how can we wake these lot up? How can we cause division? Right? They're too cocky. Look at them celebrating too much. Look at them. They look at their dark art. Look what they're doing. You know, creating things to just divide us, right? And so, you know what I'm like? We're a club, right? We're a club of people. It's so important to stay united right now. I know we're going to go into women's later on, and I will talk about it a bit more in that regard. But it's so important to stay united. It's so important not to be broken apart. So important not to be distracted and create distractions which are going to hurt us as a group. You know, and so that's where I am with it. When I was talking the other day about Saka and how they're always trying to pit him against other players. Mate, we're smarter than that. We know the game. We know the game. We're smarter than that. We can see what he does. We watched England without him yesterday. It's not the same. It's not the same. There is no penetration that side. It's not the same. Trust me, every coach knows what he can do. We haven't got to get upset about it. You know what I mean? All we got to do is make sure that he gets as many loud cheers as he possibly does when he plays for us. That's all that matters. That he feels supported within our environment, and the rest of them can do one, as far as I'm concerned.
My friend Ian, who you know well,
Mm-hmm.
Ian was texting me this weekend because he was watching ESPN in the States. And he's like, this is crazy. It's all betting content. That's all it is. It's over-unders, it's lines, it's betting tips. He's like, can I just enjoy sports because I like sports anymore? You know, I was thinking about it because growing up, ESPN in the States was the gold standard of sports coverage. You didn't miss it. If you were an NFL fan, Sunday belonged to ESPN before the games and after the games. You know, if you were a college basketball fan, whatever you loved, you were tuning into ESPN. They were the gold standard. And I think what's happened to a lot of these major outlets, and this is true probably in the UK as it is in the US, ESPN is losing their relevance. People are choosing social media, they're choosing podcasts, they're choosing YouTubers, they're choosing streaming, you know, they're choosing all kinds of content that that ESPN no longer has that edge for.
Yeah.
And they're going for where the revenue is. And the revenue is in gambling and trolling. That's right. Embrace debate. That whole thing, right? The Stephen A. Smith and
First Take.
what's his name? Yeah,
Shannon.
First Take and and who's the Dallas Cowboys fit? Why can't I think of his name?
Well, Skip Bayless used to be around,
Skip
didn't he?
Bayless. That was
Skip's
yeah.
cancelled, isn't he?
Right. Well, I mean, makes not a surprise. But the point is that it's trolling and rage bait and gambling. That's where they can make their money because that's where they can still get people to care by getting them angry enough to care or by trying to get them to, gamble with their gambling partners. ESPN Bet is now a betting site, right? They have a license for that. And so I do think that it's a shame in a way because while I want people to listen to this pod and sign up for our Patreon and be part of our content silo, I would like us to all have content we can engage with that is generalized content so we can be knowledgeable outside of our own bubble. And so I try to find places to go get good football content that's not just Arsenal centric, so I can exit my bubble. I think Phil's doing some great stuff, by the way, with Football Vision, but I want to go outside the bubble, and that's getting harder and harder. So for the time being, I think the economics of it, fighting for clicks and for gambling money, that's going to only lead you to one place, and you can see where that's going. So
Yeah, it's true.
it's a shame.
One thing that I have seen recently that I really, really like, and it's something that Andrew Allen does for Andrew. He does like an Arse mail every single week, and it's just a list of good content that's come out that sometimes we might miss.
Yeah.
And I really like that. There needs to be more of that, I think, to bringing like-minded people into things that they might enjoy. And
especially if it's outside the Arsenal bubble.
Yeah,
because I know
exactly.
the Arsenal creators that I like, but outside of that, I struggle to find the stuff that
exactly. I think
need,
so. I'm doing a little bit of outside of football study at the moment to try to understand Arteta as a coach better, so that I can articulate myself better. And when I get it right and I got it clear, I'll start to share what I'm looking at. And I think to sort of help people broaden their thought process around football. And it's in rugby, by the way. So yeah, there's always interesting angles and interesting things to look at. We don't have to fall for the Jamie O'Hara's and the Cundys, who I think are extremely funny. Honestly, I laugh my head off at them sometimes when I'm going back late at night from a game. I laugh my head off at the people coming in there. I'm not taking them serious anymore. Don't take them seriously. Know what they're trying to do and embrace it for what it actually is. But don't get your blood pressure up too much, because they're just having fun with you. And we have fun here sometimes, don't we? And it's just football, man. You know what I mean? Let it flow.
Yeah.
Focus on your team and what we're doing.
And that's the thing. I think one of the things that we took for granted, especially someone of my generation, is you used to not have to go look for the good content. You turned on a channel that you trusted and the content was there. And maybe it was never good, but we thought it was good, or at least they didn't have to resort to certain tactics to get your attention. I think that's changed. And I think now you have to work a little harder to find the stuff that's good. But you know what? There's plenty of good stuff out there still. It just takes a little more work to find it. Okay, we're going to ask a question here about women's game. But before I do, I just want to mention that you should be using NordVPN. If you're not using NordVPN, then, what are you even doing? Because I leave the country. I go to the UK. I want to watch the football. The football isn't on. The football's back on in the US. You know what I do? I click NordVPN on my phone or on my tablet or on my computer, and boom, I can watch the football back home. We had a listener meetup at a pub on Upper Street last season. United were playing Fulham. Game wasn't on anywhere. I NordVPN back to the US, put it on my phone. We all gathered around and watched Alex Iwobi score a winner against United. It was brilliant. Before going and watching Arsenal beat Newcastle. It was brilliant. Brilliant day. NordVPN helped make it a brilliant day. Great for when you're on social media and everyone's sharing this video. You got to watch this. And you click and it says not available in your location. Click, boom, it's available in your location. Plus, it has threat protection. It protects your privacy as well. All the things you really want. And there's a pretty fantastic value with what they give us for Arsenal Vision listeners. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months on top. That's pretty good. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Clive. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. This one comes from Cheech in the Discord. Would Emma Hayes also be underperforming with our squad? Are the players playing for Eidevall? It's a pretty straightforward question. You may not like the way it's put forward. It's not a pleasant thought to consider Emma Hayes coaching the Arsenal team, but would she be getting a song out of this group? And have they stopped playing for Eidevall?
I think whenever we're having discussions in the past around Emery, etc., the first thing I look for is the break in the triangle between the manager, the players, and the fans. From looking online, you haven't got to look far to see that the fans are not having Jonas at the moment. If you look at the players, I think the players respect him, but I'm not sure they love him. And I think I'm the sort of person that likes to have a connection with football players. And when I coach, I couldn't have a connection with them. I just couldn't coach them as well. Some people can coach 25 strangers, rock up with their cones, with their balls, and just go bang, bang, bang to a session and change their heads. For me personally, I'm a bit more of a interpersonal coach, emotional intelligence coach, and I think Jonas is struggling on that side of things, the likability side of things. I think that's starting to show a little bit more now. It's an interesting one. I think Arsenal as a club on the women's side has always been a market leader. They've always led the way. They've always invested for many, many years before. Tim's been doing this since I think 2006 time. He's been watching. I may be wrong, and he's seen the growth of the game, and also been at the forefront of the growth of the game. Right, but the game is moving very, very fast, and our position within it is one of huge club, historic value, but they're not quite winning the big moments. And the way we're not winning them is very similar to the last time when we don't win them. And so then you start to look at the relationships with the players and the coach, and then you start to look at the tactics. I'm not going to go too heavy into that. We'll do that on the One Club tomorrow, but I definitely see a disconnect. I went to the game on Saturday, and one of the things I love about going to women's game, Elliot, the atmosphere is like so joyous. It's so joyous. And you walk into the game, there's so many happy people. You see parts of society that you don't normally see, really enjoy themselves, feeling free to express themselves. Women are under no sort of physical pressure. The environment is not very aggressive. It's just lovely. Honestly, mate, it's just lovely. You heard me talk about it before. It's just lovely. I was walking to a game on the weekend. It felt like I was walking to a funeral. People were down. People were still there to support. That's what you should do in good times and bad. It didn't feel as joyous. And that's part of it. And it's almost like a reminder, mate. It wasn't so long ago we had these feelings about the men's team. When we started this podcast, it was about we were having this every single week. And it's like a reminder. Football is not linear. It's just not always fried chicken and Stella Artois walking to the game, right? Enjoying yourself. It's not always that. Sometimes it's hard. Right, and it's hard. You can see the disconnect. You can see the challenges. You can see maybe some indifferent recruitment. You can see the fact that he's relying on players that maybe are getting close to their sell-by date, and there's a group of young players there that don't feel empowered to show what they can show. There's so much to discuss here. So much to discuss, and it'd be interesting to see what the club do next. But the signs are pointing towards a change. When that happens, I'm not sure, but it's definitely pointing towards a change.
Yeah. Look, you're not entitled to win in football. And so, your expectations can't just be, we expect to win. We do expect to win, and winning should be the goal, but there are other things that you can look at. I'm not a keen watcher of the women's game, but even I could see the goals that we conceded against Chelsea, and that's not good enough. No. Basic errors, poor positioning, players not really fighting to get to the ball. It looked a little bit late era. You know what I mean? You know when a manager is sort of towards the end and there are some really unpleasant moments that when you watch the video back, you go, gosh, they really weren't doing it for that manager, were they? Some of the defending on the goals we conceded, to me, Clive, it wasn't just a lack of organization, which it was a lack of application. And you should never be able to see that. Now, look, I could be letting narrative guide my analysis, but I thought there were some, let's put it this way, there were some very, very basic errors in the defending there that I don't think you could just describe with talent or explain with talent.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talent in the group. There is a lot of talent in the group. And me and Tim talk about it all the time. Honestly, I bug him to death. And we talk about the tactics and the systems and what we should do to get the best out of this group, and should we change systems? That's part of the fun that everyone does on their own individual WhatsApp. But the fact we're doing this so much is we don't do it as much on the men's team because our recruitment strategy is clear. Our positions are pretty clear. There's a couple of debates to have. When we sign a player, we know what he looks like and why he's been signed immediately, And I don't see that same clarity on the women's side. I think we lack pace in defence, we lack pace in wide areas, yet we play two wingers every single week. So we've got a million number 10s that we can't get on the pitch, and so it's a challenge. it's a real challenge. But they've changed the goalkeeper recently, but one's young, one's a little bit more experienced. Goalkeeper's got huge potential. Daphne von Demselaar, she's got huge potential. Centre backs, we're okay, but maybe we could do one more. We need wide players with pace, and we need more pace up front as well, and we absolutely need to take our chances more without getting too heavy. I said I wouldn't get too heavy, and here I go. I'm starting already. We've created the most big chances, but you converted the least. We have a problem, and we tend to play better against the better teams, but not so much against the weaker teams. But now we've lost two to Bayern Munich and Chelsea in 4 or 5 days. We have a problem. And a couple of wins can change it, Elliot, but I fear that there's been a disconnection. And that's the worry. Results change things. There's been a disconnection, and I'm not sure we can rejoin that disconnect.
Yep. Well, you'll get into that more in the One Club pod. A lot of different questions, by the way, as usual, on stupid things I do, bad pronunciations I make. Look, the answer to all of these things is I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing, and I apologize profusely. A couple of good questions. We don't usually do science, but I thought this was really interesting, and I'm into science myself, physics. So physics question for us. This one comes from Raya Deep Mountain Kai. Good morning. The multiverse hypothesis posits that our universe may be one of an infinite number of parallel universes, which is a theory that I think has gained a lot of momentum, but I think Raya Deep Mountain Kai has just debunked it. If that is correct, there is a universe where Spurs win trophies every season. Is this the greatest argument against the multiverse hypothesis? I would go straight to whatever science organization gives out Nobel Prizes, or what's the other prize? The physics prize. Oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called.
Don't ask
me. Why can't I think of it? Well, it'll come to me, but you've just won it, my friend. You have literally debunked the multiverse theory, because if the multiverse theory is true, there is a universe where Spurs win all the time, and we know that's not possible. I did get a question from someone that I thought was a little bit interesting. This one comes from Lars at Bronx_Lars. Hi, gents. Love the pod and your Patreon. Which football stat do you love the most? I think it's one of these things, right? Some people position themselves as stats specific people, and some people position themselves as, I watch with my eyes. I think on this pod, we've clearly identified that we think there is a way for those things to live together, that stats are not an answer to football. They're not a skeleton key to football, but that they can help. And I got to reiterate, I think expected goals is a great stat, and it gets a lot of pushback. And I think it gets pushed back for a very simple reason. Some people try to use it as a skeleton key to say it explains everything in football, and it clearly doesn't. But from the start, what I think XG has done really well, and I'll make this very brief. Everybody who's ever watched football before stats even existed said, "Oh, that's a chance. Oh, that's a half chance. Little chance there. Oh, that's a huge chance," right? We've all said these things. XG literally just tells you, looking at the basket of all of the times that chance has existed, you'd expect it to be scored at this percentage, right? So when you say, "Oh, that's a huge chance," XG might say, well, 40% of the time a chance like that gets scored. 60% it doesn't. And we know, look, scoring is the hardest thing to do in football. And one of the mistakes I think we make, Clive, that XG helps us with a little bit is we think if a player's got a shot 10 yards out with one defender in front of him and the goalkeeper, that he should score, he must score. But we know it's really hard, right? I mean, think of the chances that Villa missed in our games, right? He must score. It's hard to score. Players miss chances you wouldn't expect them to all the time. So I do like expected goals, because I think it is a reminder, first of all, that most chances don't get scored, that scoring is very hard. It's a way to add up all of the, should have scored, nearly scored, might have well scored. And what I really like about it too, people will complain, they'll say, but XG doesn't give you credit for the attacks where there's no shot. And I think that's exactly right. But if you use it the right way and you don't use it as a skeleton key, it can give you a really good understanding of, because sometimes I'll look at an Arsenal game and say, how did we not have more XG? And that tells me we didn't convert some of our dominance into chances the way we should have, right? So you can use all this stuff, because sometimes, for example, you wind up with a game like the Southampton game or the Leicester game, where you're going, that was too nervy, it shouldn't have been that nervy. And then you look and the XG is like 3.8 to 0.2, and you realize, oh, you know what? Football's weird sometimes. They scored a Golazo and a bunch of our shots didn't go in, but we really outplayed them. So I like it, Clive. I certainly don't think it's a skeleton key. I certainly don't think it's an answer to football. But I think that because we tend to pull out one or two big moments from games and build a narrative for ourselves around that, sometimes the stats help pull us out of a narrative that we may have wrongly concocted for ourselves.
Yeah, I like the XG against. I like the league table format. You can see it where we are
Yeah.
in the table format. Again, we watch every game and we know the context. We know we've had to do games with 10 men. We know that we've jogged around after European games, suddenly had a quick interaction, and then we suddenly have a massive big chance a game against Leicester, so maybe skewed us in a positive direction. Well, you guys have taught me all this now, right? So I sound like an expert, right? So but now I relax a little bit more on these type of things. There are some snippets you can take to help you talk about the game. I love the average position maps myself. I like to see where we are, what our shape looks like. But when you look at them over a 10-game period, they don't change that much. I just like to see that. I used to focus a lot more on the pass combinations, but again, we're getting quite solidified in our principles. They don't change massively. Touches help me assess a game when someone's had a much more involvement. Those type of things we can all get to now. I remember West Ham last year, the home game. I think we had 70 plus touches. I want to say 77 touches in the box. To have that information, bang! I watched the game. I knew we had a problem, but to beat the inbox touch record and lose the game 2-0, we can have a discussion about it. So this type of transparency around what's happened has really been positive for me. It helps us discuss the game, but it can't be the game for me. Do you know what I mean? It can't be the game. I do think you have to feel a game as well and get a feeling about what somebody does. The first time I saw Calafiori play, he came on, he looked big. He looked probably too big from the summer. And Elliot, I just watched him invert and I watched him go inside. He didn't trot inside, he went inside. Then he won a header and I thought, oh, okay, I'm not sure what's coming here, but this guy's not afraid of the interior. He's happy on the exterior and everything he does goes forward. We have a player. I haven't looked at his numbers since. I know we have a player to learn, just based on how I felt when I saw him and his actions and decisiveness of movement. Put the two together, in a 2 month time, a bigger sample size, we can have a proper chat, can't we, about what he is, right? And I think the two sides of that is so important to broaden our knowledge, shall we say, on the overall game.
Yeah. If the more information you can incorporate into your understanding of football, the better, right? I think anyone that wants to sell you an answer to football is someone you should be skeptical of. But anytime you have information that can help you understand the game better, you should do it. And I think what you want to try to do is not have the big moment of a game or the couple big moments of the game drive your only understanding of what happened in the game. Right. And so what I think data can do actually is point you in a direction of, I need to see this again. I don't think I picked up on that. Or, oh, interesting. We had 77 box touches. Maybe I need to see what we were doing in the attacking third. Or, oh, we had the most high turnovers of any team. I didn't realize our press had been that effective because I was so nervous about being 1-0 down. Let me watch that. Right. It can direct you towards things that you watch a little differently. And ideally we blend it all together and we not make it stats versus eyes, because I think that's just a false dichotomy that we don't need to have, in the way we approach football.
It's just information. It's just information that allows us to understand the game better. And there are lots of people watching. Coaches are watching this for sure. Elliot, I was walking the dogs yesterday and I went to watch a Sunday morning game near where I live for St. Joseph's, a very good Sunday morning team. And they are knocking the ball around at the back like Man City on occasions. Decide to take 5 passes, knock, then going down the sides. Promise you, when I was playing for that team 20 years ago, mate, 25 years ago, sorry, trust me, we weren't knocking the ball around at the back. We weren't doing that. We were getting it forward on the halfway line headers and competing and slide tackling. That's what we were doing. The game has changed. The transparency of the game has changed. And people are taking this on board at all levels. From academy levels right the way through Sundays and Saturdays, non-league football. There are teams, they're absolutely defined by their passing strategy in non-league. And I know who those teams are, particularly in National League South. I know who those teams are. It's so interesting to watch the evolution of the game and how it drip feeds down through the leagues. I think he's so good. I watched Salford the other week, I think against MK Dons, I think it was. You should have seen the passing at the back. Incredible, People criticised it because goals were conceded, but the fact people are thinking about doing this is, for me, I think it's a positive that we're trying to absorb the game in different ways.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, I got two more. They're both fun. One's about transfers. One's about point totals. So let's save the transfer one for last. So this one comes from Topside Righty in Discord. Clive, is 100-point season achievable with this group of players? And if not, what would need to change to get us there?
You know what? We've become so accustomed to the consistency this team has shown this year. I don't think we've fully embraced it. All we can remember is that Aston Villa game, that we didn't quite win. But look at all the rest in 2024. I mean, I'm talking to you, Scott. We've got to produce something about what we're actually doing. It's like, I haven't seen this very many times in my lifetime, the level of consistency and the pace that we're on, and so I do think it's incredible how we've created a team which has a floor which allows us to compete. We've recruited a team which is built around the competitive contest of the game while having supreme on-ball talent and not disrespecting any part of the game, So yeah, what we're doing right now is massively, massively interesting. And I'm not sure we've had runs like this in recent times, but I just need to see it all on paper before I go too big.
I speak dog, so I'm going to translate for you what your dog is saying. Answer the question. Answer the question. Stop dodging the question. Answer the question. Answer the question. Is 100-point season possible, Clive? That's what the dog wants to know. Can they do it?
I don't think we're going to need it. So
answer the question. Answer the question.
I'd say no. I'd say no.
But okay, why not? What would this team need to get to 100 points? 100 points is like no one does it. It's been done once ever. But like, what would this team need?
Yeah.
If you had to add one more quality to this team to say, I think it could do it, what would the quality be? What's it missing?
For me, I would like another forward of real.
Yeah, I agree.
Real talent.
More goals.
Another forward.
Need more goals. Yeah.
Who the league fears. So basically, that's the thing I would like to see. But Elliot, I do think sometimes when you have a bit of a break, you have to take a breath and have a look at your perception. And the perception that we have is we can be a little bit arrogant. I'm sure I agree with it. But I'm trying to be humble until we win something big. I think this team can win something big. And when we show it, I think that's the time to really shout. Do you know what I mean? Go ahead.
Let's be clear for a second. This team was on a 100-point pace for more than half of a season 2 seasons ago. And it was on a 100-point pace for half of a season last season.
Yeah.
So now you can say, well, what does that get you? It gets you nothing. I get it. But the point is, we've shown that we can go on long stretches of being on track for 100 points.
Yeah.
What's derailed us in the first season, what derailed us, I think, was the cluster injuries at center back.
Yeah.
Right? That was the big part. Last season, I think what derailed us, so to speak, was actually the first half of the season where we were playing Eddie and Ketty at striker, and we were still trying to figure out what the mix was. And we hadn't integrated Kai, and it was just a slowness to be able to integrate the pieces to find the right fit to the puzzle, right? I think this season we're in that first half of last season period again, right? Slowness to fit the pieces together. The difference is we're accruing points. We're accruing points in tough games. I think this team can do it. I really do, because I think defensively we're unique and our midfield physicality is unique and our corners and set piece routines are unique. I think all the details are minded now. I think we're a deeper squad. I really believe we might be that one chance creating forward or goal scoring forward short to do it, because to get to 100 points, it's not that you can't drop any points, but you've got to go massacre, beat down all the teams that aren't in your league. And you can't have a game that winds up 1-1 or 0-0 because you just couldn't quite crack it at the end there. So Clive, I do think this team has shown over 2 consecutive seasons it can be on that pace for a long period of time.
Yeah.
If we can if we can accrue points now before we've even really clicked and found our optimal setup, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I mean, look, I'm not saying we'll do it this season, but I'm not going to say it's impossible for this group.
Yeah, I think as I always wanted another player. I don't think I've ever been happy with the squad in my whole life. I'm not sure who that player is, by the way, and how
Thierry
he's going to
Henry.
fit. I mean, yeah. But maybe the season, from a scoring perspective, is wrapped up in the three players up top end. That one we just got on loan, and Gabriel Jesus, who we need to rediscover, and Gabriel Martinelli, who we're just rediscovering. And if we can get output from those three players, we've got a real chance, haven't we? And they've all done it before. Can they do it consistently when we need them to do it in the critical moments? Like Trossard has shown. That's what he's really shown. He's able to deliver in the critical moments, apart from Villa at home. It's the only time he failed us. In the critical moments, he delivers. Can we get that sort of level of output from those three? Martinelli seems to be right there. Let's hope his calf is okay. Sterling is building up to our levels. And Jesus is having a little bit of a down period at the moment where I think maybe he's struggling emotionally to really find his role, really find relationships. But the boy can play, right? There's no doubt about it. He can play. And so if we can find output from those three, that really takes us above and beyond when someone else is a little bit lower in Havertz, Saka and Trossard, can they step into that group and really go? Then we haven't got a problem. But I suspect we need something to step up in those three players.
Yeah, and I just think you got to realize how special we are as a team, that we're massacring a Southampton at home with a heavily rotated side. And Southampton somehow wind up being 1-0 up. And in the past, that's a disaster, right? And we huff and puff, but we never blow the door down, and we don't create the chances we need, or we're chasing the comeback and it winds up being 2 for Southampton. You blink, that was 3-1. That team just said, no, sorry, that's not happening. 3-1. And we had the ability, I think, to go up a gear when we need to in a special way. I'll finish on this, Clive, a transfer question for everybody to go home happy. This comes from Adam1878 on Discord. Hypothetically, if you had to buy one player and sell one player in January, who would you go for? Who would you sell? Start with that, then who would you buy? I think the sale is easy for me, personally.
Go on then, give me the sale.
I'd sell Kivior because, firstly, I think he has value. I think there are teams in Italy that want him, and you could actually get money for him. And because I just look at the lot, I mean, as we start to get fitter, Tomiyasu can play center back, Calafiori can play center back, White can play center back, White can play fullback, Timber plays fullback, Zinchenko plays fullback, Calafiori plays fullback, Timber's over there as well, Tomiyasu's over there as well. I mean, I think Zinchenko's actually harder to sell. He's on a higher wage, he's a little older, and his fitness track record is not as good. So I think you could sell Kivior and be fine. I mean, again, if you have to sell one, there's a market for him, and I doubt he's super satisfied with his role, so he'd be the one I'd sell.
Yeah, but why would you sell somebody that's useful and is fit and available more often than he's not?
Well, I mean, the alternative is sell Zinchenko, but you got to make a market for that player, and that player I think is actually harder to sell.
We said who to sell and who to buy, right? So
I mean, all right. So let me just give my honest truth. I kind of think when push comes to shove, I think Zinchenko can play at our level more than I think Kivior can play at our. People get so mad at me about not rating Kivior more. It is what it is. He's a player that I don't connect to very well. It's not because I think he's crap. I think his combination of qualities, we can get away with playing him. I mean, we played him during one of our best runs ever last season, so I fully acknowledge it. I think I'd still be fine moving on from him. But if it's Zinchenko, honestly, I got no need to keep Zinchenko around either if that's the one you want to sell. One of those two would be the choice.
One of those three, potentially.
Wait, there was a third? Who was the third?
Tomiyasu.
Oh, Tomiyasu. Yeah. See, Tommy's a tough one for me because when fit, I think he can keep Calafiori out of the side. He can keep Timber out of the side. He's a great player when fit. He's just never fit.
He never fit, right? So these are distressed assets, right? So you got to deal with them, right? So if they get fitter, then they play and it causes us a problem. So yeah, it's for me, it's one of those three. Particularly with Miles Lewis Skelly coming in and doing a very good Zinchenko impersonation. I think you have to create room in your depth chart for someone who can do a similar job with similar physique, similar size. And so you don't take out the tall guys, right? So Zinchenko would be the one I would lose first, because I think we've got a youth player that can do some of that job. Not as well, obviously, but some of that job, right? So that's what I
Good
would
point.
do. And the player that I would buy, what I'm going to say, I like
Benjamin
Sesko.
Sesko.
Yeah, I like him. I don't think he's perfect. I don't think he's would smash the league apart. I think it would take time. I think it needs to be nurtured. If that price is too high, I don't think it works. Honestly, I don't think it works. But you don't find many 6'5" forwards that run like him, that can jump like him, that can shoot like him. I'm prepared to work with that, and see what we can do. So that's the player that I would look for. I just think he's unique. Someone said online the other day about Kai Havertz. He said he's unguardable. I really like that phrase. Sometimes in the NBA, you get matchups where you can't guard the player. I really like that phrase. And I see the same for Sesko. In certain scenarios, he's unguardable. And a lot of what we do is about having dominance in key moments that we create, in areas of the pitch that we create. He's another one that does that. And I don't want to see Kai Havertz lying on the floor, star-shaped after every single game because he's run himself into the ground. Wouldn't it be great to share that position? And that's where I want us to get to going forward.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of who I would buy, you can always get silly with it. I like Eze still like the player. I still think he's a player we could do some fun things with. But I think Sesko makes a lot of sense. I think you'd be getting him before he's ready, but you're not putting him in a position where he has to play every game. You know what I mean? You can leverage his unique physical capabilities without saying to him, go lead the line for Arsenal for 38 games and win us a title. So he steps it, like Xerxes and Højlund, two players that I think have talent, but who went to United at the wrong time in their career with question marks around certain parts of their talent. And I think both players who could have used either an intermediate move or more time to develop before being big money acquisitions by one of the biggest clubs on the planet, and then getting thrust into a situation that wasn't able to nurture them and nurture their talent.
Yeah.
Sesko, it's the opposite. You're coming into a project that is filled with young, talented players that can nurture you, give you a cushion. You got a great coach who can coach you up. You can come in situations where you're ready to thrive. So I think he's a great choice, Clive.
Yeah, he's the one. I think depends on number, right? But and other players come along very, very quickly, Elliot, and I'll remove my Sesko thoughts when I see someone else's maybe a bit better, a bit more suited. So but all the ones I know so far, he's the one that I like for this group overall. But we need to make moves to exit before that happens, and so it's a summer thing for me, if I'm honest.
Yep. All right. I think that's plenty for an interlull Monday. When we get to Thursday, we'll actually kind of know how things are shaping up for the Bournemouth game, and we can get into that in more detail, which is what we'll do. We'll have the One Club tomorrow with Clive and Tim. You won't want to miss that as they both rage against the manager in a way that is quite unsavory.
We don't
honestly.
rage.
Okay.
We discuss.
We'll see about that. Clive's on Twitter. Clive, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. By the way, I think it's the last day to vote for us for the FCAs. So if you could do that, that'd be great. If you can't do that, that's also great. We just love you. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yank Gunner. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. No.